Welcome to Alex's A to Z, the show where I kicked balls. Yes, 26 episodes a season, a letter an episode, a game a letter. Last was F, and it was FIFA. But we are back for G, and I am joined by Hans.
What about you?
Nick.
Hello.
And IY.
Hello.
To decide what game I shall be playing next. I don't know who I'm passing it to.
You got to pass it to yourself.
Alex, what are we doing this
It's
time?
like when I need to pick for Game Club.
So, before I started FIFA, we all put down a guess as to what points I would end the season at. And they're in a document, and I can't remember what they are. So
I have them up if you would like me to go through them.
Okay. Okay, do the number, and then we'll put
I will go through. I'll say someone's number. They can say their game, and then you can reveal to us what the actual points were.
Okay, that'll do.
So, in descending order, IY with 69. What is your game?
Genshin Impact.
Alright. Then me with 62. I have picked Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy.
Oh, you actually picked that?
Wow.
Then next is Alex with 57.
God of War 2.
And finally, Hans with 43.
Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
I do like Vice City.
One of the best soundtracks in any game ever.
Alex, what was your final points total?
I have uploaded the image to the Discord.
Wow, you were
Yep.
dead on. Rigged, I say.
And I did simulate half the games. And I didn't even win all the played games as well, so I want to point that out.
Can I just say, I knew this before coming in because I watched the episode to make sure everything was okay. So I didn't want to say anything. But yeah, I was like, is this good? I can already hear Nick and I calling shenanigans.
I couldn't believe it as soon as I finished the last match because I simmed it. I was like, they're not going to believe this is real.
Well, Alex, you'll be playing your own game then.
Oh, what a surprise.
Nick is looking out the window and just shock and awe.
Disgust. Rigged.
I know. It looks pretty dodgy, but I promise I didn't rig the season. I 100% got incredibly lucky. But anyway, let's talk God of War 2. It's an action hack and slash game that came out on the PlayStation 2. I have never played a God of War game, though I have played games that I think are similar to it, like Dante's Inferno. It's one of those series that I've never really thought about, mainly due to it being exclusively on PlayStations. And after the PlayStation 2, we became an Xbox household. So there hasn't really been a chance for me to play them. Maybe there's an argument for me picking the first game to get a proper introduction to the series. But my thought process is that since this came out later, and I think it was towards the end of the PS2 era, it should have fixed problems that the first game had, and it should look and feel better than the first game. Prediction time though. Since I've only ever really heard good things about this series, it seems reasonable to say this could be the first game I completely enjoy. That's a bold assumption and prediction, I know. Watch me regret saying that later. However, it's a PS2 era game. It's like 14 years old, I believe. It's probably going to be a bit janky, but I am looking forward to this one. Fingers crossed. Let's get God killing. Don't worry lads, I got this. Don't care what you were about to say there, mate. Is she gonna nick the sword?
asked to attend to this matter myself. Athena refused to undo her mistake. Imagine caring for a creature such as yourself.
Got him. Hanging out with the boys, you know. Just hang in there, man. I'll be there in a second. I just need to navigate this contrived area. Great. More air battles. When I picked God of War, I'll be honest, I didn't envision there was going to be like air battle segments. Nope, I wasn't paying attention. God, I hope it isn't so far. Okay. That would have been pretty bad. Oh, it changed the button. Oh my god. God, it baited me. Man, that's a hairy chest. What? How is it? What? What? Alright, let's approach this slowly. Alright, I avoided death that time. Hell yeah.
I do not think that is your choice to make.
Man, you could have just said, yep, I'm here to see the sisters. Zeus sent me, you know, he let me in.
Who is the greatest warrior?
Now he has to be all like, oh, Zeus is gonna die, ooh. Oh, thank God. Thank God. Whoops. That was a pretty sick dodge. Oh, he's super dead though. Alright, I'll take my time getting there, don't worry. Really, game? Really? I'm spinning the analog stick so fast. You know what? Stop it. I'll do it again. That is a load of crap. Look at this animation. It's not even bloody moving. I am spinning the stick as fast as I can. Man, it must have been a bloody nightmare setting this roof up. Could you imagine getting a contractor in? Yeah, so I need to set up a trap on the roof. Alright, okay. What kind of trap? Oh, you know, saw blades. I'll ram it in there. Get it? Because it's a key of the ram. Ah, you get it. You get it. Where did he put that skull? Did he just jam a skull right up? We'll just pretend we didn't see it. Oh. Of course there's bloody enemies, because why not? As if it wasn't problematic enough having a big wave of fire. Let's just spawn enemies, hell yeah. Oh, and also, they're not affected by the fire. I don't know why this game thinks it needs to spawn enemies at every single puzzle. It's not the fact, you know, yes, the enemies are quite irritating here, but the fact that it's the bloody one that can block. I mean, I know I have to blur some of it, but should I blur the face as well? Because that's just unpleasant. Just kill me. This has been such a boring ass fight. The amount of Quicktime events in this game is insane. Is it going to change the button? Is it going to bloody change the button?
Your torment is just beginning.
It is. It changed the button. They happen so fast. Jesus Christ. But there it is. God of War 2 completed. And that's a wrap. We see another set of credits rolling on in the background there. God of War 2 is done. And I will now discuss my experience, starting with the good. So I found the story of this game pretty interesting. I made a lot of assumptions about what happened in the first game, such as Kratos killing Ares and becoming the God of War, which upset the rest of the gods on Olympus, I'm guessing. Which then leads into the start of this game, where Kratos descends into a battle, is tricked into giving up his god powers in order to defeat a Colossus, and the object in which he infuses his god powers, the Blade of Olympus, is then used by Zeus to kill him. But he's not dead, no, he's saved by a titan called Gaia, who is the enemy of the gods, and sends Kratos on an adventure to meet the Fate Sisters so he can go back in time and kill Zeus before Zeus kills him. Of course, it's not as easy as, just waltzing in to the chamber of the Fate Sisters and be like, yo, send me back in time, nee. Eventually, though, you do go back, and instead of killing Zeus, you accidentally kill Athena, and you find out that Kratos is the son of Zeus. And then in the final bit of the game, Kratos goes back further in time, brings back the Titans who had lost the war to the gods to the present time, so they can now wage war against the gods again on Olympus, which I'm assuming is setting up for God of War 3. So that's the gist of it. For me, I do love some Greek mythology, so the story was right up my alley. The different ways they introduced various figures of legend was also a nice touch. An example of this is Icarus, who is seen as a broken and desperate man trying to reach the Sisters of Fate to save himself from his fall into the underworld. Sure, he's really only there so you can steal his wings and unlock a new float mechanic to reach further away ledges. It was interesting seeing him depicted in such a crazed state. Also, I really like the setting and the overall story, like I said, so I am kind of gutted. I'll probably never get to personally experience the story of God of War past this game, unless of course you wanna port it to PC. But we all know that ain't happening. Let's talk about the combat. For the most part, I found it pretty enjoyable. Later on, I found myself enjoying it less and less, though I'll talk about that in a bit. Having the size as the core weapon felt pretty good. I did try to branch out and use the spear later on, because you get a spear and a hammer as alternate weapons. But I didn't really like the hammer. I just kept falling back to the basic size, maybe because I had upgraded them to the max, so they did more damage. The magic felt pretty meh at the beginning, I'll be honest. I mean, the bow isn't a very interesting spell, but whenever I got the lightning and the earthquake spells, especially upgrading them, I found myself coming around to the magic more. And they also proved pretty good because the lightning could stun lock enemies, and you could cheese damage because you get iframes while you're doing the earth stomp animation. But the upgrades definitely made them feel better to use. Though the upgrade system seemed to be designed to either push you to specialize in a weapon and a spell to max them out, and maybe dabble in a couple of others to try and get a level on them, or it was made with a new game plus in mind, where you carry all the stats over to another game and continue upgrading everything there, which is fine, but it meant the combat wasn't overly deep. I still enjoyed most of it though. And we'll move on to the bad, and we'll talk about my main issue with the combat: the enemies. Later on, and at various points in the story, the game introduces tougher enemies, as you'd expect. However, some of them can block pretty much everything you throw at them, and they're immune to grab, so you can't even grab them out of their block. Having these spawn in arena fights slowed down the combat massively, so it meant resorting to trying to cheese it with stun locking them or using iframes with the magic. hoping to parry them and knock them up with the returned power, or entering rage mode and hope they can't block those hits. Spoiler alert, they usually could. Some of the special enemies, such as the Medusas, were particularly annoying to fight. Their like stone beam thing, you could parry it, but it then triggered a Quicktime event, so you didn't get turned to stone. But when you parry something, why do you need a Quicktime event when you've just parried it? Anyway, boss fights. If the fights were interesting, I could almost gloss over some of these issues with the combat, but they weren't. I get it. At this stage, it's an old game. It's like 14 years old. But I mean, come on. The last boss in the game, Zeus, was such an underwhelming fight. It just broke down to parry the bolts, throw them back at him, hit him twice, he's blocking, roll about, dodge the blasts, parry the bolts back at him, hit him twice. You get where I'm going with this. And it wasn't just Zeus, it was pretty much the same for all the boss fights. It just broke down to find the move you can parry and throw back at them, and then try and get a couple of cheap shots in before they block, and then wait until they do a move, dodge the move, hit them a couple of times. I just didn't find a lot of the boss fights overly interesting, and they lasted a very, very long time. If they didn't last as long as they did, I probably wouldn't have a major issue with them, but the fact that they lasted so long and they weren't overly interesting to begin with, it just makes it worse. I would say maybe the Perseus fight was a slight exception, as each phase had him using a different weapon. The first phase he was invisible, so you had to like figure out where he was by the splashes in the water, and in the phase where he was blocking with a shield, you could actually knock him into walls to stun him so you could attack him. That was an interesting fight to a degree, because the other phases, you know, were not very interesting. But I have to say, as crap as the Zeus fight was, the fight before that in the Fate Chamber, or whatever it's called, that was probably the biggest disappointment for me anyway. It seemed like she was hyped up because she's in the background. You have to work your way up through different like platforms and levels, and her body is like massive. So I was thinking it would be a hell of a fight once you got to the top, but all the fight boiled down to was you had to stun her so that she didn't flail with her arms, so you could pull some levers to get a pendulum up eventually. It took a while. I think it was like 5 or 6 you had to pull to get the pendulum up. But once you got the pendulum up, you just threw it at her, Quicktime event, and that's her dead. Yeah, it wasn't a very interesting fight, I'll be honest. And the final thing for the bad, the camera. It was pretty grim in some places, like the fixed cam, not ideal. The weird lens flares, bit over the top in some places. And having the dodge on the right stick just felt a bit unnatural. Took a bit of getting used to, as that's something I would usually consider to have camera controls on it, but of course you can't control the camera in this game. Anyway, let's move on to the final bit, the ugly. I'm honestly surprised they didn't just call this game God of Quicktime Events, because my god, were there so many of them. Why were there so many Quicktime events? It was insane. It was insane the amount of Quicktime events in this game. Of course, each boss fight has them. And not only do they have Quicktime events, if you mess it up, after you stun them again and get the prompt to grab them, they change the buttons for the Quicktime events. So you can't even bloody memorize them. I mean, it's not like they made a boss fight that was essentially one long ass Quicktime event though, right? Of course they bloody did. The Icarus fight is essentially a long ass Quicktime event with breaks in between to throw some punches and headbutts. And like I said in the Earthbound video, there is a reason why these mechanics aren't as popular anymore. They are not fun to deal with. Sure, games will throw the odd Quicktime event here and there for storytelling stuff, and I can kind of understand it for boss fights in this game. But having nearly every fight and every action where you don't control the character have a Quicktime event is way too much. Having them there to execute some of the enemies, and not even like using Quicktime events to execute all the bigger enemies. Some of them you could just decapitate without one. So why couldn't they do that for others? I don't get it. Maybe this is just a bit of personal bias, because I have never enjoyed QuickTime events in any game I've played. So by far, this is the biggest problem with God of War 2. There's just way too many. The fact that they change the buttons, they don't need to change the buttons each time. If I fail a QuickTime event, it's because I wasn't fast enough to react. So why would you then change the button prompts so that I may not be able to react a second or a third time? Keep the buttons the same if you're going to have that many goddamn QuickTime events in the game. But I'll calm down a wee bit and move on to talking about how my predictions stacked up this time around. So I said that I thought I would completely enjoy this game. Boy, did that come back to haunt me, because while I did enjoy aspects of it, the negatives were a bit too prevalent to say I completely enjoyed it, as you could probably tell from my last rant there. I said I expected some jankiness from the game, since it's an old game and it was on PlayStation 2. I can safely say there was. Climbing ropes or chains was a bit of a nightmare. Interacting with stuff could also be a bit of a nightmare because of the hitbox. And the camera jankiness. Yeah. Let's talk Alex enjoyment rating. This game is getting a QuickTime event